I got over 9,000 steps in so far today. I had eight and a half miles yesterday. But yes, I want to welcome you all. There was a little confusion here about whether this started at 1:15 or 1:30. I asked the speaker and he said 1:30. I said, okay, I'll be there just before that. But I want to introduce Mark Borckardt. Most of you know him. He was issued or minted in St. Paul, Minnesota, and then moved to Findlay, Ohio. And I've known Mark since he was a kid, and he's only a few years younger than me, so I was kind of a kid too. But I bought a large cent from his dad in a shop in Ohio when I was traveling. And Mark's our historian and part of our research group. He's been a professional numismatist since 1980. And around 1989, he began to do a whole bunch of cataloging, which he does now, still does that for stacks.
Excuse me?
I mean, heritage. Previous, yeah, okay. Heritage. Mark has a lot of accolades here, but my favorite one is the 2020 ANA Numismatist of the Year. And he's going to be the host of next year's EAC in Madison, Wisconsin. So we're looking forward to seeing you all there. And thank you. And Mark's talk is about not jumping to conclusions when you're looking at provenance chains. So here's Mark Borckardt.
Thank you, Jerry. So first of all, I should mention that one of my two daughters, Melissa, when she's not working in her field, she likes taking pictures of her dog. So this is Rook, because Melissa also likes to play chess, so that's where the name came from. And I thought since I titled this "Don't Jump to Conclusions," that would be a fitting way to open the PowerPoint. There is no guarantee that past or present numismatic researchers and catalogers are correct. Don't jump to the conclusion that such work is accurate. So I am nearing the end of my 4th decade as a numismatic cataloger, and as much as I would like to believe that all of my work is accurate and correct, I'm under no illusion that that is the case. Everyone is human, everyone makes mistakes, including myself. So one aspect of numismatic research is the creation of provenance chains for top-grade pieces of a particular item, or in some cases, all known examples. So the 3 basic steps are to gather the data, organize the data, and analyze the data. So to illustrate the whole process, what we're going to attempt to do today is create an accurate, a correct, complete condition census of 1811 Mickley restrike half cents. Hopefully at the conclusion of our discussion today, we will have reached that goal. However, an extended record of the 1811 Mickley restrike half cents is likely impossible. When I was cataloging the Jim McGuigan collection, I wrote the following. Most examples were unplated in older catalogs that are also unknown with buyers' names, making the construction of extended provenance chains impossible. Many surviving examples are similar in appearance, rendering plate matching virtually impossible, and pedigrees listed in past catalogs are oftentimes unreliable. Now, when I look at this, you look at this photo, and you see a lot of different marks on the surface of the coin. However, most of those marks are the same on every one of the known 1811 restrike half cents. So that makes plate matching virtually impossible. So having said that what I would like for us to accomplish today is impossible, we're still going to try. So hopefully at the end of the hour, you will all have a better appreciation of what's involved, what the difficulties are, and if it's even possible to create one of these chains. So the first step is gathering the data. Where do you find this data? There are several places. The auction company archives are a very important source of information. When you go to either our archives at Heritage or Stack's Bowers or Chris McCauley's early sense auctions, Goldberg, Great Collections, they all record the various coins that they have sold in their archives. Now there are some exceptions to that that make it a little difficult, but basically that's a starting place. Then we go to PCGS CoinFacts that has a great deal of auction records from past sales. Charles Morgan here is pretty much in charge of that today, aren't you, Charles?
Yes, sir.
What can you tell us about PCGS CoinFacts?
Well, it is turning into a live service and with more frequent updates, and we're going to standardize our narratives, and I'm doing a lot of cross-referencing on images to make sure we eliminate duplicates.
Okay, and that's pretty much what we all do as census researchers. We are trying to eliminate duplications. We are trying to make the record as accurate as possible. We are also trying to correct the mistakes of previous researchers. And there was one situation where I noticed that I had an incomplete or incorrect pedigree in one of my past catalog descriptions of these 1811 restrikes. So I went to the Heritage Auction Archives and I found 6 different examples of the 1811 Mickley restrike that we have handled in our past auctions. I went to Stack's Bowers and I found 6 different examples in their archives. Now we're all handling millions and millions of coins, and to only find 6 of them over so many years is very unusual. So the Heritage Auction Archives include all auctions that our company has had since 1993, although photos are usually not available for sales prior to about 2000. The Stack's Bowers archives include all of the American Numismatic Rarities catalogs, all of the Stack's auctions starting in about September 2004, and all of the Stack's Bowers auctions when they started using that name in 2011. The early sense auctions, unfortunately, their website was not accessible when I was working to finish up this talk literally this morning. Goldberg auctions, I was only able to find 3 examples of the 1811 Mickley restrike in their auctions since 1999. Great Collections, they've never handled one, as far as I could tell. So, in addition to the auction company archives, I went to PCGS CoinFacts. I found 4 additional listings that were not included in the major company archives. Then I went to published census records. Some of those are available for free. Others are in books that you may have to purchase or beg, borrow, or steal. Probably not, don't steal them. Others are available via paid subscriptions. So one of the most important is the Noyes-Lusk Early Copper Database, also known as Numismatic. Unfortunately, for the average collector, it's not really a realistic possibility because it actually costs several $1,000s, I believe. I don't know the exact price parameters, but it's not something that's available to the average collector. However, the database has more than 33,000 photographic images of colonials, half cents, and large cents. So it's invaluable for those of us that are in the business. There was also a series of books called Auction Prices Realized. They started out with the Rome Reports Incorporated and were continued by Krause Publications. They pretty much list every U.S. coin sold at auction between the years of 1972 and 2001. Those are extremely important references. They are, I don't know that they're publicly or easily available today. I mean, I've found them on eBay, so they can be acquired, and they're extremely valuable. So when I went through the Auction Prices Realized books, I found an additional 4 1811 Mickley restrike half cents that hadn't been mentioned in some of the other sources. Now I want to ask a question of everybody. How many of you have actually used the Newman Numismatic portal? All right, how many of you have not used it? Okay, I'm not here to embarrass anybody, but please take a moment, a few minutes, a few hours, whatever you can spare, to at least go to the website, which I have listed there, and take a look at what they offer. It's totally free. You don't have to pay a thing, and it is probably the single most valuable research site available to any of you. If you want to look at an obscure auction catalog from 1860s or 1870s or 1920s or whatever it is, you'll find it there. Leanna, do you happen to have any idea how many auction catalogs they have at the Newman portal?
Ooh, I know you can find that number on the website, but not off the top of my head.
Okay. They have over 430 different auction companies whose catalogs are on the portal. I don't know how many actual catalogs they have, but it's many thousand. And they are all there, freely accessible. It is a remarkable resource. So if you haven't taken the time to go look at that resource, please do. So once you've gathered all the data, what are you going to do with it? Well, you have to have some sort of organization to keep track of everything. I have found from experience the steps of gathering the data for a particular census and organizing the data for that census is generally done all at the same time. But when I'm trying to keep track of the data, I have a spreadsheet with those columns on it. I try and have a unique image number for each one. Then I want to know exactly where I found that information, what the source was, and I want to keep track of all the specific details for each individual item that is listed. And then we start analyzing the data, and this is probably the most challenging step, especially for these 1811 Mickley restrike half cents. First of all, I want to look at a couple specifics in terms of looking at the data. Most coins today, not all coins, but most coins today are certified either by PCGS or NGC or Annex or the newer CAC certification. If you see two auction listings and they both have the same certification ID number on the holder, you can be certain that those are the same coin, making different appearances. So that, pay attention to the certification ID numbers. They will help you keep track of certain coins. Today's high resolution photos are better than anything we've had in the past. The quality of photography is vastly improved, and the access to those high resolution photos makes plate matching much easier. Also look at the timeline. What I mean by that, I'll just give you an example. The late Donald Partridge bought his 1811 Mickley restrike half set in January 1967, and his estate sold the coin in April 2021. So what that tells you immediately is any other Mickley restrike that was sold between those two dates cannot be the Partridge example. So the timeline of when coins were offered is extremely important. Now, some of the challenges, when you look at coins that are in certified holders, one of the things that you have to consider is, are the marks you're looking at, the scratches, especially because that's the main thing that happens to the holders, are those on the coin or the holder? If they're on the holder, you need to ignore them. But if they're on the coin, you need to pay attention to them. I wish I had an easy way to explain to you how to tell the difference when you're looking at a random photo on a website. One thing I can tell you is if you see a light or white colored scratch and it continues past the edge of the coin, well, you can pretty much figure out that's a scratch on the holder. Generally, the white or light colored scratches that you see in photos today are probably on the holder. It's not a guarantee, but that's probably the case. Another issue is lighting. When a photographer is taking a picture of a coin, if they direct the light in different directions towards the coin, whether it's from the right or the left or from the top or the bottom, it's going to make the coin look different. So you have to be very careful about that to make sure that you're looking at the same marks. Some marks might completely disappear if the lighting is in a different direction. I see Charles over there shaking his head because you've experienced that, haven't you? The biggest challenge, especially in much older catalogs, stock photos. What do we mean by stock photos? Well, basically we mean, and this was something that BMAX Mel was famous for, other firms were also famous for it as well. These two sets of images appeared in two different BMAX Mel catalogs. To the left was the Dunham catalog, and to the right was the Neal catalog. Do they look like the same coin? Yeah, they look like the same coin. Are they the same coin? In other words, was the coin in the Neal collection the same coin that was offered in the Dunham collection? We don't know. Probably not, but maybe. The picture on your left, the Dunham coin, to the best of my knowledge, that was the first time the BMX Mel ever sold one of these Mickley restrikes. So it's probably a picture of the coin that he actually sold as part of the Dunham collection. However, once he had that photo in place, when it came to the Neal catalog a few years later, it looks to me like he just grabbed the same photo and stuck it in the catalog. There are in some other areas, there are ways to tell if a photo is a stock photo. If BMX Mel is selling a 1794 silver dollar that he grades good, and he shows you a picture in the catalog of one that looks to you like it's mint state, it's probably not a photo of the real coin. Stock photos create all kinds of problems, and unfortunately past researchers didn't really consider that, so they just looked at these two photos. Oh yeah, that's the same coin. Well, it must have gone from Dunham to Roach to Neal. Maybe it did. I don't know. I can't prove it. So that's a major situation that you have to pay attention to. So let's see if we can actually create the census. The first coin I have listed, MS-66 red and brown, it was the Missouri cabinet coin. It's probably finest known. When I look at this photo, a couple specific items stand out to me. Down at the bottom right of the obverse, between the last star and the one in the date, you see a very dark spot. In this case, I think it was a little spot into the coin, so I'm going to borrow a word from the diamond business and call it an inclusion. I also see another dark spot right inside star 10 at about 3 o'clock. Those two markers and a couple others are on the coin, on this coin itself, and not on the others. So what we're doing is we're looking at all the past offerings of coins that have those features, and then we can reasonably assume that they're the same coin and match them up. So in this case, I'm looking at the, originally the Breen census. In his half-cent encyclopedia, he started out with Canfield, New Jersey Historical, went to the Park Bernay Galleries in September 1969. Unfortunately, I was not able to find a copy of that catalog. That's one of the few instances where the Newman portal did not come through for me. But we know it went to the collector Tettenhorst. His real name was Bernard Edison. And then to the Missouri cabinet. I have not seen it offered since the Missouri cabinet, so I think that it must have gone into a private collection where it remains today. I can speculate on whose collection I think it might be, but that, again, that would be speculation. We don't want to do that. The next coin, the Partridge coin. When I look at this coin, if you look between the bases of the second and third one and the date, I don't know how clear it shows up on this image. It's probably not real clear, especially if you're sitting in the back, but there's a small spot, a dark spot, between the two ones. And that's a feature that's only unique to this coin. There are a few other spots that I've noticed that have allowed me to plate match this coin back to a sale in 1965. Now I believe that this coin was the one that Walter Breen said was from the Dunham and the Roach and the Neal collections. And then they said it went to the Joseph Robston collection. So he attached that whole pedigree to this coin, except for a problem. The Robston coin was in a different collection at the time. So it couldn't be this coin. In fact, here's the Robston collection. So this particular coin, again, when I look at it, I see a very small spot. If you look at the top left star on the obverse, you should be able to see a really tiny dark spot between the outer 2 points of that star. Again, that's a unique feature to the single coin that allows us to identify this as the coin that eventually ended up in the Brent Pogue collection. After that, we have the coin that was in Jim McGuigan's collection. This coin was earlier in the Philip Showers collection that Stack sold in a 1969 fixed price list. So on this particular coin, I looked at the star to the right obverse, and there's like a curved depression that goes from there to the border. That should be fairly easy to see. And that depression does not appear on any other coin, so it's unique to this coin rather than a mark that came from the dies like a lot of the rust marks. So again, this coin I was able to match up specifically to Showers, to McGuigan, and so that one was fairly easy to match up. Now, none of these coins I've been able to find in much older auction catalogs. So then one of the really challenging coins is this example that went from a Thomas Elder sale in 1905 to Virgil Brand, then was in the Brandis collection and estate until 1983. The challenge with this coin is there's really no markers whatsoever on the coin that I can use to plate match it with other. Every mark that you see on this coin, you're going to see on all 1811 restrike half cents. So this is a case where I pretty much have to trust that the past researchers were correct, and its most recent appearance was in 2004. So this one was a bit of a challenge for me. I also notice on this coin, in the Noyes Lusk copper database, they actually have this coin shown twice with 2 different Noyes photo numbers. So I've already emailed John Lusk, and he's going to make the correction on that. The next coin I was looking at was an MS-64 Brown that we offered in 1985, and it continued on through a Goldberg sale in 2017. This particular coin, if you look on the reverse, right between the 2 ribbon bows, you'll see a little depression right above the ribbon bows. That is a unique characteristic to this exact coin. So again, that is something that you need to look for on all the different examples to make sure that you have the right coin. These are all the challenges that we're faced with as researchers for doing condition census. Again, not to pick on you, Charles, but I know you're experiencing a lot of this same difficulty that I experience, and certainly other catalogers as well. What I'm showing you in a short period of time here is a process that I have spent several weeks on. This is not an overnight or easy process. You have to find every catalog. You have to find every catalog description. You have to find every photo. And then you have to sit down and start comparing them 2 photo sets at a time. It's a very time-consuming process. Now, this is another example that I could only find it in those two auctions that I have listed. I'm looking at a toning spot. If you look at the what we would refer to as stars 4 and 5 on the left-hand side at about 9:30, inside those two stars, you'll see a dark spot that again is unique to the coin. You don't find it on any of the other coins. So that's another coin that has its own characteristic, as most of these do. And I kept hoping that I would find that in additional appearances, but I was not able to. So the Miles coin, it was from the Miles collection in 1969. This one is fairly easy. Take a look at Liberty's bust line just opposite star 1, and you'll see a curved line coming into the field. That is an almost unmistakable marker that can be used to identify this coin in multiple catalogs. This is probably, of all the 1811 restrikes, this coin is probably the easiest to actually plate match because of that feature. And we've only got two more coins. The Anderson DuPont coin that went to the Robeson collection, I haven't seen it since 1982. So we're, almost 45 years later, it has not reappeared anywhere. And it really doesn't have a lot of markers. If you look at the letter A in States, you'll see a line of toning that comes down from that letter to the leaf. This may be one of the other coins that we've looked at. I wasn't able to match it up to any of the others, but it's possible. And again, it may be just a lighting situation that I talked about earlier. And the last coin, this is one where I have to kind of take Walter Breen at his word, as much as I don't want to. He claimed that this went from the Peter Mogi collection in 1910 to J.C. Mitchelson, whose estate donated his collection to the Connecticut State Library. I have to assume it's still at the Connecticut State Library, but I don't know for sure. They are very cautious about who they allow in to see their collections, and I have not seen their collection whatsoever. But what we end up with, I also, when I'm doing the census research, I also keep track of all the additional auction appearances that I've recorded but I can't match up. So those are the ones that I found that I've not been able to match up. But what we end up with is what I hope is an accurate, complete census of 1811 Mickley restrike half cents. And I have 10 pieces recorded. In the past, most people have agreed that there are probably about 10 known. So I think it's reasonably accurate. And I'm happy to email this to anybody that would like it. I'm sure you'd like it, Charles. I can email it to you. What I hope I've accomplished is to give you an idea of the challenges that numismatic researchers face when we're trying to do pedigree research. So I'm happy to answer any questions if anybody has any. Wendell?
Mark, would you go back one slide? You just kind of lost me there. These are appearances of these 1811.
These are appearances of 1811 Mickley restrike half cents in past auctions These are the appearances that I could not match up to any of the individual examples I talked about.
Is it reasonable to assume that on your next slide, for which you've identified those, that these are in addition to those, or
No,
they fit into
it's-
the others someplace else?
It's reasonable in most cases to assume that these additional appearances are probably the same coins that I've already identified. I just can't match them up.
But you don't know that, do you? These
I-
could be other completely
They,
unique
they
examples.
they could be additional coins that are not among the 10 that I found. In most cases, that's unlikely, but it's certainly possible. Aside from the one from 1974, and the only reason I couldn't match that one up is because the plate quality was too poor to really be able to tell. Then from there, we're going back to 1948.
Well, and you've got 1911. None of these were probably plated, right?
Some of them, a few of them were, most of them were not. And I go back to, the one in 1859, that's before plates even existed for coins. So these are ones that you can't match up with any of the other examples. However, I list them because I don't want somebody to come to me later and say, well, what about the Alvord collection coin? Well, it wasn't plated in the catalog. There's no way to know for sure. Frank?
So, when you started, you showed a slide of the data that you try to record for each coin
Mhm.
in your database or in your spreadsheet. And the last thing you have there is buyer. Is that, how do you figure that out? Just because either you were at it was your firm's auction, or?
No, in most cases, well, if it's one of the heritage auctions that I'm cataloging, I probably can't confidentially share that information. When I say buyer, a lot of the old catalogs, like especially the Chapman catalogs, there are actually copies that are called named copies. That somebody has taken the time, they were probably at the sale at the time, and they actually recorded who purchased the coin. There are also, in the case of the Chapman catalogs, especially the later Chapmans, there are what are called their bid books, which I believe in most cases literature collector Dan Hamelberg provided to the Newman portal. And those were actually the Chapman's recorded copies of their sale where they had to have the buyer listed.
Okay. But there's no way that a regular collector like me can look at a catalog from Heritage or Stax or whatever and figure out who the buyer was.
Nope.
I can't.
You can't do that.
Okay. I thought I was missing something. But
No, no. Basically, that's if we know who the buyer was in an older catalog,
You should have, right.
then we can take that information and that will help us construct the pedigree chain.
Really basic, because I don't know anything about the Mickley restrikes. I guess this was later in the 1800s.
Okay.
Somebody named Mickley got hold of the dies.
Okay, let me tell you the story about that in a nutshell. There was a collector in the 19th century named Joseph Mickley. Now, first of all, Mickley, if I remember the story correctly, was born in 1799. And he was the one that always tried to find a 1799 large cent from the year he was born. And we all know now that's one of the rare dates, and he could never find one. But apparently sometime, I believe in the 1830s, the U.S. Mint decided just, we're gonna sell the old dies as scrap metal, which obviously would never happen today. But apparently Joseph Mickley, this is the story that's always handed down, he purchased this lot of scrap metal, old coin dies, And then he took whatever dies he had available of the same denomination. In this case, the 1811 obverse for the half cent, and he had the reverse from the type of 1802. And he just put the two together, and then he had coins struck, probably in the late 1850s. We know that one was offered in 1859, so it was probably before that. And how many he had struck, we don't know. The bottom line about the Mickley restrikes, and there were also 1804 large cent restrikes and 1823 large cent restrikes and several others. Bottom line is they're counterfeit. These are counterfeit coins. They're also highly collectible.
And identifiable because they don't match up with the 1811.
Right, the obverse and the reverse never existed at the mint. So, Ed?
Did you ever consider using the weight of these coins to identify specific examples?
Okay, Ed brings up a good point. Do I consider using the weight of the examples?
I mean, I know some of them
Yeah,
don't have weight, but
yes, to a certain extent, but basically no.
they didn't weigh them back then? Like in the old
Some of them were weighed in the older catalog. I don't know if the person doing the weighing knew how to weigh a coin.
Fair enough.
I can't prove that. So generally, no, I don't. Chuck?
Yeah, question and then a comment. Do those dies, the Mickley dies, still exist?
Those particular dice, I'm not sure. I have to assume they probably do. The only dies for a restrike that I know still exist, Jules River had the dies for the 1823 large cent restrike. And when we handled his collection, we couldn't sell them. So we suggested to the family that they donate them to the ANA in Colorado. So if you want to see what original coin dice look like and you happen to be in Colorado at Colorado Springs, ask Doug Mudd or one of the other people there to show you the 1823 dice. He'll be happy to do so.
And a comment.
Okay?
It was informative. It was interesting. And it's unbelievably useful. Thank you. Bravo to you.
You're welcome.
Ditto.
Now, I have, oh, Wendell?
No, were you still taking questions? Or?
Well, yeah, of course I'll still take questions.
Well, where does all of the work on large sense provenances of Del Bland fit into this picture? As I understand it, his notes are all now owned by the ANS. Have they made it onto the numismatic portal in any way, or where do you just put them? Boxes and boxes apparently of his provenance notes.
Okay, I don't know about all his specific notes. I know for the early large cents, I edited the Walter Breen large cent encyclopedia, the big blue book.
I know that, yes.
And all of the census information in there is from Del Blant. As far as his other work, I do not know if the ANS has that or not. Does anybody?
That's what I was.
Does anybody know? Does ANS have all of Del Bland's census notes?
Yeah.
They do. Okay.
When,
So-
when you edited the Breen book, did you feel like the provenance data in that book by Del Bland was quite accurate, believable?
I think that in terms of Del Bland's pedigree work, he was one of the best. And I would suggest that was his work 100% accurate? Nobody's is. Would I say it's better than, more than 90% accurate? Absolutely. No. Okay. I have a little bit of a challenge here. Last year when I gave a talk, Is Jim Swales, are you here? So last year when I gave a talk, I gave away a copy of Penny Whimsy from my personal library. Jim was a recipient. So this year, he brought his, what then became a duplicate copy, and asked me to give it away. And I thought about this, how am I going to do this? I mean, this just kind of happened. And does anybody know what Dr. Sheldon's favorite large scent variety was? Anyone? I believe it was Sheldon 48. So what I was thinking is we would go to row 4 in the audience, and unfortunately row 4 only has 7 people in it.
It's a non-collectible.
But I do see. Okay, so row 4 now has 8 people in it. I actually had my eye on a particular person who might appreciate having a copy of Penny Whimsy. So I'm just going to present it. Since he just moved from the 3rd row to the 4th row. I also understand you're a rather new collector.
Yeah,
Is this your first EAC convention?
yeah, it is.
Welcome. You're welcome.
Love it here.
That's all I have.